No matter what standard you're using to judge them, Spider-Man's enemies are some of the greatest villains in comic book history. Unfortunately, Spidey's villain roster is also one of the largest, and that means there's plenty of room for some truly stupid characters alongside these iconic bad guys. In today's video, we're going to take a look at the top 8 worst Spider-Man villains. But before we go any further, make sure you press that little red button to subscribe to our channel. And if you haven't done it yet, press the bell icon to get notified every time we drop a new video. Number 8. The Spot. When the Spot first revealed himself to Spider-Man and the Black Cat in The Spectacular Spider-Man, Spidey fell down laughing at the name. However, it isn't quite as bad as another moniker, the Human Dalmatian. Spot's real name is Dr. Jonathan Owen, a scientist tasked by Kingpin to research the cloak's abilities. Owen was initially successful, however, after investigating the portal his experiment created, he found himself in a dimension between dimensions. After returning to our own, his body was altered, colored white with black spots, or instances of a dimension. Owen actually used his ability to beat Spidey at the first encounter, but every subsequent encounter he found himself easily defeated. Spider-Man simply forced Spot to throw his dimensions off his body, leaving Owen entirely spotless and vulnerable. We could have spotted that one a mile away. Number 7. Stegron. Dr. Vincent Stegron was one of the many scientists working under Kirk Connors for S.H.I.E.L.D. Obsessed over the lizard formula, Stegron stole a vial along with an extract of Stegosaurus DNA and ejected them both. Stegron became the Dinosaur Man and was intent on ruling the world with the formerly extinct lizards by his side. After returning to New York City, he invaded the Natural History Museum with a ray that brought the dinosaur skeletons to life. However, the harsh winters of New York defeated the cold-blooded creature, and he fell into hibernation. Stegron awoke in human form and lived homeless in Central Park until he was hit by a stray mutation ray from Vulture's gun. Reverted back into dinosaur form, Stegron traveled back to Antarctica to gather dinosaur followers. His return was short-lived because, as any third grader could tell you, Antarctica is even chillier than New York. Number 6. Typeface. Typeface's creator, Paul Jenkins, took his character down a very silly and weird path. Thomas decides the best way to take out his frustrations on the world is to draw a bunch of letters all over his face and body. Then he waged his one-man war against society's ills armed with oversized letters. In other words, he's just like the Punisher without the guns and the skull t-shirt, and if the Punisher religiously watched Sesame Street. As if this wasn't hilariously bad enough, Typeface later recruited himself a sidekick named Spellcheck. He also tried leading counter-revolution against Iron Man's pro-registration forces during the first Marvel Civil War. That, however, led to his apparent demise at the hands of Venom. Number 5. The White Rabbit. Whenever people talk about Spider-Man's worst villains, the White Rabbit always comes up into the conversation. After all, she's an inherently goofy villain who's never succeeded at any of her various criminal schemes. Here's the secret though, the White Rabbit actually rules. Lorena Dodson, who is an incredibly wealthy young woman who grew up obsessed with Alice in Wonderland because her cruel, overbearing family kept her sheltered. She's so ineffective at villainy, her appearances average at about 6 panels before she's webbed up by Spidey and carted off to jail. That when she tried to put together a gang, even other lifelong losers like the Big Wheel refused to work with her. That didn't stop her though. When she needed henchmen, she just hired actors, convincing them to join her plot to destroy New York with man-eating bunnies by paying them more than they could make in the theater. If you're not convinced about her awesomeness, let's sum this up another way. A bad childhood, infinite wealth, unstoppable determination, inspired to dress as an animal to better terrorize your enemies? White Rabbit's not a dumb villain. She's the closest thing the Marvel Universe has to Batman. Number 4. Alistair Smythe. Alistair Smythe is a mad scientist responsible for creating an army of robots called Spider Slayers, resulting in some of the worst Spider-Man comics of the 1990s. Appropriately, the character appears in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, easily the worst Spider-Man movie of literally any decade. Smythe is played by B.G. Novak and reinterpreted as Electro's shitty boss at Oscorp, where he does not build a single Spider Slayer. I can't decide if it's a good thing or a bad thing. Number 3. Mindworm. William Turner was born a mutant with an enlarged cranium and incredible intelligence. Through unintentional psionic feeding, he killed his mother, leading his distraught father to run into the streets and get hit by a car. Turner was bullied at the orphanage and given the name Mindworm. As an adult, he moved back to New York, where he fed off minds of fellow tenants in his apartment. He only fed enough to survive, never so much that he hurt or killed anyone. When Peter Parker moved into Mindworm's building, he attempted to feed off his mind, but Parker was too strong. He physically beat Turner and left him for the police. After his release, Turner was left homeless and destitute. He was eventually killed by a local street gang. Mindworm's otherwise compelling backstory was muddled up over his appearances, and he makes the list for being one of the easiest villains to vanquish. Number 2. Morlun. Basically, Morlun is a vampire, the kind of someone who read one too many Anne Rice novels who dress up for goth parties and sci-fi conventions. Only instead of feasting on blood, he drains energy from people with totemic qualities and Spidey totems, like Spider-Man in particular. Not exactly a very in-depth character, especially one out of the step of a more street-level superhero. Yet for some reason, perhaps on the strength of Straczynski's Coming Home, readers mistook Morlun for an unstoppable badass. Or perhaps because Morlun has the dubious distinction of ripping out and eating Peter Parker's eye in the otherwise inconsequential crossover, The Other Evolve or Die. Never mind that he died twice during both stories. Then fans learned Morlun belonged to the whole family of steampunk-themed interdimensional vampires called the Inheritors during 2014's epic Spider-Man event, Spider-Verse. And the reason Morlun kept coming back to life? It's because he and his fellow Inheritors are also clones. Eventually, the various Spider-Man and women exiled Morlun and the Inheritors on the alternate Earth ravaged by a nuclear holocaust, as radiation is their one weakness, and readers bid them all good riddance. Number 1. Shocker. Affectionately called the Vibrator by his greatest foe, Herman Schultz is easily the most recognizable villain to make this list. When meddling career criminal Schultz used his time in jail to craft a shockwave-amplifying battlesuit, he escaped confinement and became Shocker. Though he defeated Spidey on their first bout, it was only because Peter's arm had recently been broken. We'd like to think things would have gone completely different if the Spider's limbs were all functional. However, Shocker has pulled off some impressive feats, including blacking out portions of New York City only to spell his name from a bird's-eye perspective with lights. Shocker was also a member of the Masters of Evil and even fought alongside the Guardians of the Galaxy when they faced alien doubles of themselves. And that's all for today's video. Let us know your views in the comment section below. And don't forget to like this video before leaving. Thanks for watching.